Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone is having a good day. As I told you guys yesterday and Tuesday during class, I unfortunately will not be able to be in class with you guys today because I do have my own seniors to teach. However, you will still be able to get all the information needed and necessary through this lovely video I prepared for you today. So make sure at this time that you have a journal out and start writing your notes out because, again, I will be checking next time I see you. Now, in today's class, we're going to focus on the early 19th century industrialization in America, specifically looking at the market revolution. Now, what I mean by this is that up until this point, we have solely been focusing more on the political aspect and the political development of the country, right? We've been looking at the different presidents, what their policies are, the political parties, right? Some uh, political affairs that the country's been involved in, some foreign policy, just a little bit of everything, right? But now we need to talk about the country itself. And more specifically, we're going to talk about the development of the economy that happens in the country. Now, really quickly, I want you guys to take a second, look at these two pictures. I'll give you a second. Now, while looking at these pictures, look at what the differences are between them. Compare and contrast them, right? If you look, this picture right here on the left, this is going to be your older picture now. I know a lot of people get confused because one's in color and one's is not. The color doesn't really matter, right? Yes, it's a difference, but it's not a huge important thing. The thing that's important is look at the actions of the people. Here, this image is going to represent your before, meaning that it's going to represent how the manufacturing industry and the how products are being made were different, right? This is going to be a slow, time-consuming process. It's going to be made up by how much people can quickly produce their products, right? And there's no real efficient way, right? It's really just one person or a group of people coming together to create whatever product they're making. Now, when you compare it to this picture, it is very different, right? Here we see a lot of people working on products, right? And each person, they are very hard at work, meaning that they are, this image is supposed to represent a factory, right? A factory in the after part of the market revolution and see how the econo the economy has changed a little bit, right? The industrialization of the country, right? And even you can even see how the jobs have changed a little bit, right? And so that is really what we're going to focus on in today's lesson. But in order to talk about how the economy has shifted and how industrialization has occurred and factories have created, one thing that they heavily depend on is going to be the transportation, right? So within the market revolution, consider that a umbrella term. Within the market revolution, there is a smaller revolution known as the transportation revolution, right? Which is pretty self-explanatory, right? Talking about how the transportation system within the country has changed. At the turn of the 19th century or the 1800s, we really start to see roads start to be developed, right? And the first road that's going to be developed is going to be in Pennsylvania, right? It's going to be known as the Pennsylvania Lancaster Turnpike, which is going to be built in 1790, which is what we see right here. Lancaster to Philadelphia, that green line. Now, what it does is that it's going to create a short toll road between Philadelphia and Lancaster, right? Connecting both cities. And it's going to create a nice, safe road that people can travel on and how their products can be sent from one city to another, right? They are connected. Now, this is going to be very successful between the two cities, that it's going to inspire other country's major cities to start connecting with each other. So that by the mid 1820s, we're going to see all of the major cities in the country connect with each other with these other short roads, right? As you can see when you follow this line, right? There's the main connections between Baltimore and Cumberland, right? Columbus and Wheeling, Springfield, Indianapolis, Vandalia, St. Louis, so on and so forth, right? So we really see this transportation system start to be developed. Now, another piece of the transportation revolution is going to be as a direct result from new technological changes, right? And the new technology that was created during this time is going to be the steamboat. Now, the steamboat is going to be powered by a steam engine, right? So steam coming from water, right? Vapor from water that's heated up, right? And this is going to begin in 1807 when a man named Robert Fulton is going to create this steam powered boat, right? And it's going to be the first boat to travel up the Hudson River. Now, with this success, he is then going to start commercializing these steamboats, right, making it very popular with all of the industries and all of the all of the industries that they're going to start creating their own steamboats because they realize that it's going to make shipping their products a lot faster and also a lot cheaper. But if you think about it, does every state have a river to connect to each other? Can you connect Illinois to Kentucky through river? No, you can't, right? So steamboats weren't necessarily the solution for everybody. However, one way to solve this, right, and I use that term loosely, is that these states are going to then create what's known as a canal, right? A canal is basically like a man-made river, right? And so in 1825, we're going to see New York is going to complete the Erie Canal, and that's going to be a major event in the country, leading to the linking of the western farms with the eastern city. And that is going to then push for economic growth because now we can have this intercity trade happening. And it's also going to, again, it's going to encourage all of the other states to start building their own canals because they want to get a hand in developing trade within their own states and outside of their own states. Now, one of the biggest developments during the transportation revolution is going to be the creation of the railroad. Now, the railroad is going to be way more effective transportation than the canals and steamboats at that time because the railroad is not dependent on the season. It's going to be much more flexible and more dependable. Meaning, if you think about it, a canal depends on the water, but water changes throughout the seasons. If the summer, water will evaporate if it's too hot, or in the winter, water turns to ice, which is going to affect how canals are being used and how steamboats can travel. And so this is going to make the railroad much more reliable because it's obviously on land. And it's going to also mean that it's better because not every city is next to a body of water or has the ability to create a canal. So this is going to be especially very important and uh, very much a good thing for the cities because it's going to be better for transporting their agricultural products. And if you take a look at this map right here, by the end of 1860, all of these lines, all of the ones in red and all the ones in black, these all represent railroads. And they're going to connect every major city in the United States at the time. So as a result of the transportation revolution, some of the biggest effects is that it's going to save people time and money for the journey that their products had to go through, right? And it's also going to produce a huge growth in the manufacturing that is going on in all of the cities. It's also going to encourage settlement that's in the West because now that people can make money, they now have the opportunity to save a little bit and move west and find more opportunities. But lastly, it's going to lead to an increased foreign trade. So there's going to be a lot of very important effects of the transportation revolution on the people. Now, this development in our transportation system is going to directly impact the growth on our factory system. And there are going to be two important figures during this time that led to the creation of this new factory system. One of them is going to be a man known as Eli Whitney, which is this man right here, and also another man named Samuel Slater. Now, Eli Whitney, he's going to be important to the factory system because he is responsible for creating interchangeable parts and the cotton gin. Now, this is the cotton gin right here, and what the cotton gin did is essentially is you put raw cotton that is freshly picked right here. You turn the lever, right? Once you put the cotton in, you turn the lever, and once you're turning it, this spindle is going to spin, and essentially the end result will be is that it's going to separate the cotton from all of its seeds, making the process much faster. But Eli Whitney is also going to be responsible for creating interchangeable parts. Essentially, he changes the way products are made, especially a lot of the handmade products. What he does is he realizes, specifically he focuses on rifles at first, and then eventually other companies are going to adopt this method. But he notices that rifles are basically just made up of a bunch of complicated pieces. So he figured out a way to make those pieces simpler and find a way for them to fit each other like a puzzle, right? Kind of thinking of interchangeable parts as Legos, and you can use those pieces for other products as well. The same way you can use one Lego to fit another Lego piece. And so with that, we see the beginnings of factory corporations happen, right? We see the beginning of these big major businesses start to develop that some of them still exist to this day, and we're actually going to talk about one in a bit. Now, with the creation of these two things from Eli Whitney, Samuel Slater is going to then come to the United States from Britain. He immigrates from Britain and he establishes the first factory in 1791, and he's going to establish that in New England. And so because of this, New England is now going to emerge as the country's leading manufacturing center. Because we also, again, as I've already spoken about, we've had the creation of the steam engine, the steam-powered engine. So using the steam-powered engine and mixing that with New England's location being next to the water, they're easily going to be able to power all of their machines that are necessary and needed. And so New England is going to raise and grow in dominance, specifically in textiles, creating a link between the northern states and the southern states, right? With the creation of the cotton gin is going to massively be produced everywhere, right? And this is how the South is linked. If you remember, the principal cash crop in the South are going to be cotton and tobacco. And now that we found a way to separate the seeds from cotton much quicker, well, that's going to speed up the production process of everything that cotton is used for, whether that be pillows, clothes, whatever. And so we're really going to see a huge boom in factories being created. Now, factories are obviously going to create new jobs, but a lot of the men during this time already have their own established jobs, right? Whether they're farmers or merchants, they already have their own jobs. So what these factories are then going to focus their attention on is, instead of focusing on hiring, young men from, we'll say, around the age of 17 and up, they're actually going to focus their attention to women and children, thus creating what's known as the Lowell system. Now, the Lowell system, being in Lowell, Massachusetts, they are responsible for creating house dorms or company dorms that look, as you can see in this picture right here. They're going to create these house dorms and even go as far as creating little towns, or utilizing the majority of their towns to house the young women that they recruit. So now these young women, they are being recruited to work in these factories and also live in those factories. And so these are going to be known as the Lowell girls. And the girls who worked in these factories, essentially what they had to go through is that they would wake up, go to work for many hours a day, sometimes as long as 17 hours a day, and then They didn't have to travel far because they already lived in their company, so they would just go to sleep, wake up, and repeat the whole process again. And so this happened with the young women in the Lowell system, but it also happened with children. Now we're going to see a huge rise in lower class children begin working at these factories, and these children are going to be as young as 7 years old that are going to be leaving their houses to work in the same conditions as these young women, meaning that they're going to work the same 12, 13 to 17 hours every day just for very little and low pay. And now these factories, one thing you need to understand is back during this time, air conditioning doesn't exist. We don't have cool temperature at the time. These factories are stacked with these steam powered machines that are obviously going to produce a lot of heat. So when you mix in all of those environmental factors of being in a tight, cramped space with a bunch of other people, and these machines are producing a lot of heat, well, that's going to start affecting these children and young women's health. And it's going to affect them very negatively. Now, in these factories, the jobs themselves are pretty simple. It's very easy to train, and it also is very simple for them to replace people, very much as like how a fast food restaurant right now is a simple job to get right now because it's easy to learn the job. So knowing this, these kids and these environmental factors being affected by these environmental factors are now being affected by it, and their health is going to start to decline. So now these children and these women are going to face dehydration, and they're going to start getting harmed, and their health is going to deteriorate. And even in some cases, some of these kids are going to die. And so as a result, we're going to see the rise in the early union movements, right? So this is very much where we see the first labor strikes happen in the country. And these labor strikes are mostly going to be made up by women. They're going to create these unions, and they are basically going to strike against their employers, being their most effective weapon against their employers or owners. Basically saying, if you do not treat us better, we do not work for you. And that's going to ultimately end up harming these business owners, because if their workers are on strike not working for them, then that means that they're not making any money. But these early unions, they were very small. They were usually local, but they were also very weak. Because one thing you have to remember is that since these manufacturing companies, all these factories are new, there are no laws to say that they couldn't impose these working conditions on these people. And so these unions, they're not going to get a lot of support from the government, but at least we see the start of the union movement. And it's going to be a while until we create child labor laws. So on top of the transportation revolution, all these transportation changes, and then also this new factory system, the last thing that the market revolution was impacted by was the creation of new technologies and of new farming technology specifically. And we're going to talk about two people that are very influential in this. And one of them, his name might be very familiar. Now that man, his name is John Deere. Now, like I said earlier, a lot of these companies at these times still exist today. The name John Deere, well, that's going to be the big farming equipment company that we see right now with the big green tractors and the little deer, the gold deal on it. Well, this is what John Deere, this is what he looks like. And in 1837, he's going to create the steel plow. And now the steel plow, what it does is that it's going to essentially dig holes in the soil, making it easy to plant seeds, right? And before the steel plow, the only way to plant seeds was for someone to individually go through each of these lines and dig tiny little holes to plant the seeds. But now with the creation of the steel plow, that's going to make this process much faster, much quicker, because even you can multiply it and ride in a carriage and have horses ride it, right? So now you can cover more area faster. But another man that was important in developing some of these farming technologies is going to be a man named Cyrus McCormick. And in 1831, he's going to create what's known as the mechanical reaper. And that's what this looks like. Now, I know that sounds like a scary name, but the mechanical reaper, all it does, and we still use it today, is all it does is that it is going to harvest a lot of these plants, right? So on the back is going to be a bunch of tiny little knives, and it's essentially like a rake. So you rake it through the grains or whatever produce they're trying to harvest, and it's going to cut the plants all down very shortly, right? And then collect it in the basket that's right behind it, right? So it's going to make this harvesting process a lot quicker for everyone. And so as a result, there's going to be a lot of effects, positive effects in commercial agriculture. Um, And with these new agricultural technologies, well, naturally, since it's making the planting and harvesting process faster, it's going to increase the production of all of these agricultural goods, and it's going to lead to a little bit of population growth. And we see a lot of new agricultural practices. However, with the rise of manufacturing and factories, we're going to see a lot of movement of people moving from the farming, rural communities to the urban centers. And once those people move to the urban centers, they're going to realize that life in these cities are going to be a little bit more expensive. And so those who live in the cities, their population is going to decline. Their birth rates are going to decline because they're going to recognize that they no longer need to have large families to maintain their farms. Now they need to maintain a small amount of people because it's more expensive to live in the cities. Now, for class today in your independent practice, I want you guys to review the economic changes that are happening during this nation. Now, this is going to be due at the end of class. At the end of this video, meaning at the very end of this PowerPoint, there's going to be a chart that you can find. Your job is to review this chart because this chart is going to describe the major differences between what the economy and culture look like during the colonial era versus how the economy has changed due to the market revolution. So on your papers in complete sentences, it it labels out both of the eras. There's going to be a column that's titled Colonial Era and a column titled The Market Revolution. In complete sentences, you must describe what the economic and government structure looked like during either both eras, what the type of production looked like, whether was it hand produced or was it factory produced, so on and so forth, what the type of production looks like in that era, what the individual wealth looks like, I'm sorry, the labor that's being used during this time. Again, um, was it seasonal? Was it year round? Were the workers tasks specific? So on and so forth. And also the individual wealth. How did people earn money? How did people How were their social classes affected? How did this affect the growth of families? So on and so forth. But again, refer to the chart for assistance. Essentially, the chart is going to lay out these differences. Your job is putting these differences into sentences. Now, again, this paper is going to be due at the end of class today. And of course, if you have any questions, let me know. Obviously, as always, my tutoring is on Thursdays after school, so definitely take advantage of that. And this is what your chart looks like. So go ahead, take a second, look at it, and refer to it while you do your complete sentences. Now, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys hopefully on Friday.